De la bouche de la cheval. I don't know what that is in Italian. I'm afraid my Italian doesn't even remember. It's not even de la bouche de la cheval in French either. That's my literal franglais translation from the horse's mouth. So welcome. Free practice 2 gets underway in even hotter conditions than FP1. Air temperature 30 and climbing, track temperature 42 and climbing, humidity 33 and dropping, you've got to think. And as the temperature continues to rise, that will throw all sorts of problems into the equation, because obviously having found maybe a little bit of a handle on your car in FP1, now there'll be a little less grip, there'll be a little more engine temperature to deal with, and there will be a little more tyre temperature to deal with. So you then have to try and alter that and predict what it's going to be like when we go qualifying, which will be at 3 p.m. local time. Starts at 3, so that will be when the sun is at its just after its zenith, and the track temperatures will be continuing to climb. Well, to give us an insight into all that and more, got Richard Coleman from Craft Bamboo Racing in the booth with us this weekend. And Richard, this is all part of the engineer's job. You've got to translate what the driver's saying, whether it's accurate, inaccurate, to what the data is trying to tell you about the car. And then you're chasing a moving envelope, especially here where we know the temperature's going to soar. There's not a cloud in the county, never mind over the racetrack. So the track's going to get hotter, slicker. I mean, this is why these guys get the big money, right?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult here, actually, and it's very easy to end up chasing the track. The tyre degradation here is really, really high, and I think that it's very, very easy to chase the track. And it's very difficult to interpret what the driver has in one session, and then the next session you can make changes, but by then the circuit's evolved, and actually it's not the direction you want to go in. So I think that's where you'll see the drivers in this session are having to try and work out what they learned in FP1 was real and what they learned in FP1 that wasn't.
Yeah, and then you've got to extrapolate and predict, and it's that prediction of where the track's going to go that experience helps with. And this is our second year here at Paul Ricard, but last year was very wet and miserable, so that doesn't really give you an awful lot of help. We heard that Pietro and Royal Motorsport are going to stay here for a couple of days testing. They're not the only ones. Nico Lapierre is going to be testing with the Lada team. Lapierre, one of Hugues de Schonach's very highly rated drivers, just raced last time in Le Mans a couple of weeks ago. So that's going to be very entertaining as well, because it's a very different car from anything he's ever driven. I haven't got access to his CV, but I wouldn't mind betting that front-wheel drive, if it plays any part of it, hasn't played any part of it in this century, and probably quite a lot longer. He may have done a bit of Clio Cup racing. He might have started out in that way. Well, Sebastian Loeb, when he started, after his gymnastic career, he started in front-wheel drive. Super 1600 Citroens. Citroen Saxo, I first remember seeing him in French rallies at epically terrifying speeds on the narrow lanes that they rally on. So coming back to front-wheel drive, maybe not so hard, but your boy Greg de Moustier, fastest of the Chevys in first free practice, and that reflects confidence in really knowing the track. Not that he's been there maybe once or twice, but he knows this place really quite well, and that's a huge bonus for him.
Yeah, definitely. He's done a huge amount of mileage here, and I think that's really shown in his confidence this morning. It's also a circuit that inspires confidence, because of the nature of the track, there's actually not that many hazards to hit. You can actually make some mistakes in the practice sessions and get away with it. And I think for a rookie driver, that gives them that confidence to really attack the circuit, and that's what we've seen this morning.
Well, cars being held, engines are fired, and when the clock counts down to 0, the green light at the end of the pit lane will be illuminated, and away we'll go out on track. Jose Maria Lopez, 5 races now without a win, needs to start turning that tide. Ivan Muller in a very good place at the moment mentally. Very interesting that Lopez, as in FP1,
the weight reducing a little bit for them, but you have to say that you would expect Slovakia ring to suit them really well.
A little bit of success ballast on the Ladas as well, 20 kilos on, 30 kilos off the Chevys. And how much does 30 kilos have an effect? I mean, you know, when the human body loses 30 kilos, that's a massive effect, but we're talking about a car that weighs a metric ton plus.
You'd be surprised, actually. I mean, we're in an industry where time is cold intense, literally, and these small margins make a big, big difference. It varies circuit to circuit and even driver to driver, but the difference can be 6-7 places on the grid.
See, if you put 30 kilos of shopping in the back of your car, I defy almost any road driver to genuinely know the difference, and yet it does have such a phenomenal difference. And that's really the thing here, is that these guys aren't just driving, they are driving to inch precision every single lap they're out there, and that's what separates guys like Sebastian Loeb, Rob Huff, Ivan Muller, all this field really, from good enthusiasts. And that's the difference, it's repeating that precision.
It's that accuracy that delivers the time, really. Every time the car's moving off that line, you're losing time. So that accuracy is where the good guys are good.
And you think, well, Sebastian Loeb is a rally driver. He's, you know, used to a car that moves around a lot and slides around a lot. So how accurate can he be? Well, it's possibly even worse. You know, if you're foot off line in a rally car doing 120 miles an hour, you tend to end up in the trees. If you're a foot off line in a racing car, you tend to end up bouncing across the grass and coming back on. So I'm sure that his precision in a rally car has been honed to as fine a precision as any racing driver's.
Yes, and his style in rallying wasn't perhaps as flamboyant as some of the others. You know, he had a much more classic style in driving a rally car. I think that's translated really well into touring car, but of course he has the car control of a rally driver.
Well, Hugo Vallant is out on track. Let's hope he's got his hands on the wheel, because he's going to have to put his brain into a different place now. We're going to hear from him.
Alright guys, welcome to the Circuit of Le Castellet, also known as Port Ricard. I'll take you around the one of the circuit. First break, around 130 meters, gotta carry a lot of speed into the first corner, as the straight is not so important for this until this corner. Second corner almost full, chicane. Carry a lot of speed as well, but I have to slow down the car a lot for the right turn. That is very important for the whole straight, especially because the straight is uphill. So the chicane is very important because it's gonna be the speed for the whole straight. And then very fast corner, almost full. Turn 5 is almost full in this one. Turn 6, Robotset. Oh. 2 apex on this one. Okay, a lot of minimum speed into the middle of the corner. A long left corner as well with a late apex. That is going to take us to the sector 3. Here we have a long corner as well with one first apex. Carry more speed and take the second apex over here. Have to brake very early and in line for the last corner of the circuit. And yeah, this was a lap around the Castellet. Very tricky to talk to you guys because it's a very short circuit and I have not a lot of time to talk to you in between the corners.
Well, that's an excellent job by Hugo Vallant. Imagine driving the racing car around and trying to concentrate on the line here in terms of the lap, because it's so convoluted. And here, one of the shortest, just 3.8 kilometres, so little over 2 and a bit miles. So it is busy, and especially when you get off the big right-hander at the end of straight senior, then you start to get lots of constant radius corners, and that's what makes this such a murderer of tyres.
Tyre degradation is everything here. And I think that's going to be a big impact on Sunday. Probably not so much in qualifying, but for Sunday, the guys are going to have to set up their cars very, very differently to how they will for qualifying this afternoon.
Well, qualifying, it's going to be one lap, isn't it? You're not going to get a quick second lap out of the tyres. So if you have a bit of run out wide, as we saw that Hugo did in the double right-hander at Beausset, then you will give away tenths of a second, and that is going to have a significant impact. One of the things I thought was interesting as Tarquini goes fastest and Hugo Vallant comes back into the pits in the first session was Mehdi Benani down in 15th place. Now, I've confidently said at breakfast that if Citroën aren't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're doing something very wrong, because they do have a pace advantage that they must use here. And I'm not quite sure why the Sebastian Loeb racing car Benani was quite so far behind. I mean, you know, from a team manager's viewpoint, if you were in that satellite team, you would hope if not expect, to get all the information from Citroën, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would expect that. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of their relationship, but I mean, for sure, you would expect that they would be sharing a lot of information and a lot of data. Having said that, you know, Mehdi's been up and down a little bit in recent races. Not quite sure what the issue is there, but he's sometimes very, very fast, and sometimes, yeah, he's seemingly quite off the pace.
Gabriele Tarquini pushing hard on a second lap there, out by the tyre stack at Senior. And actually, one of the things that you don't always remember about this place that Ugo picked up very well is when you come out to the chicane, which is, we're using only one chicane, but that is in fact the second chicane on the Mistral. When you come out to that chicane, you do come onto this quite big climb. I'm sure you notice it if you're cycling. I'm absolutely certain you notice it if you're running the track. But, you know, all of that, of course the car's going to go up it, but it's not going to slow down and stop. But we're talking about tenths. If you get the line wrong, you're going to pay for it all the way, you know, from that chicane, from the second apex, all the way up to Senior and beyond.
Absolutely, and the television is very deceptive. It doesn't give you quite the feeling of how much the incline is, but it is actually, you know, I know from the track walk, it's very uphill at that point of the circuit.
And where you drop down into turn 2 as well, that's often where we just saw Gabriele Tarquini come through. When you come through into that cut through, we often see problems there because cars suddenly, the road drops away from them. Like when you're right on the inside at La Source at Spa, it just drops right away, and suddenly full braking, nothing. You've got no grip, and the car goes on, and you only need to go on a couple of feet and you're into somebody.
Yeah, and not only that, you're also making the next corner a lot of hard work for yourself.
Yeah. So Tarquini still fastest from Norbert Mikulic and Chaga Montero, which clearly means that Citroën are working on plan B or plan C or something. What they're not doing is going as fast as they humanly can, surely.
That it's very difficult to get a read at this stage of the session as to where everyone is, because if the Hondas are using good carryovers from Slovakia, they're going to be quick at this point of the session. Likewise, if the Citroëns are using older tyres, then they're going to be struggling at this point.
Well, we saw some fairly major changes being made under one of the Castrol Hondas in free practice, not sure which it was, in FP1. And we've seen that a couple of times in Hungary when Gabriele was right out of the back of the field, and also when Norby had problems. We saw wholesale rear suspension changes, and suddenly they were the fastest two cars in race 2. So I still think that they are struggling to really get a handle on that car in quite the way that we believe that Citroën probably have on their car.
When you're out front, you make small changes to try and make the car a bit better. It's about evolution, not revolution. But I think Honda, you know, they're really struggling at the moment at some of the circuits, and therefore they're looking for bigger chunks of time, and they're having to take some risks to try and get the performance from the car.
Yeah, and that's a valid point. As we say in just about any sport, you're never going to win if you're behind by staying the same or doing the same. You've got to try and, you know, it's that laboratory discovery, that eureka moment, isn't it? You go sometimes either extreme or in what seems to be a totally opposite direction, and then suddenly for some perverse nature it works.
And the session times are quite short in World Touring Car. You don't get a lot of circuit time, and therefore it's very difficult to make big wholesale changes. And you'll see Citroën just dialing the car in at each circuit, making small changes. But Honda have got to take bigger chances. They've got to take bigger risks. And like you say, Martin, you know, they're not going to beat Citroën by being Citroën. They're going to have to make their own way.
Yeah, got to be Citroën Plus, which is very hard, as everybody in World Rallying over the last 15 years is more than happy to tell you. Ivan Muller just twiddling the brake balance. So clockwise would normally be more to the front.
Yeah,
normally. Be intuitive, wouldn't it, you would think? Which probably means it's more to the back, or it's a clutch to something. Anything I guess it is, almost inevitably it won't be on the Citroën. Now let's talk about Slovakia. We're talking about their launch controls. When we're looking in the car, they've got the extra grabby lever for presetting the clutch, just there beside the brake lever, and then the third lever he's using now is the handbrake. It's the gear shifter rather, but they've made some fairly abysmal starts and some fairly average starts all year until race 2 in Slovakia, where they just shot off. Every single Citroën seemed to make an epic start, apart from Ma, obviously, who nearly wrecked everybody else in the field. But one of the big things that you can do is gain time away from the start. It's one of the biggest places you can gain an advantage on your rivals, and is that something that Citroën rivals like Chevy, like Honda, like Lada need to be working on again?
Yeah, I think certainly it was one of the weaknesses, one of the very few weaknesses of the Citroën package. It's something that they've been a little bit sensitive of. I think some of the other teams have been trying to have a look in the cars, see what kind of system they're using, and I think that they've rightly been trying to protect that, because as we saw in Slovakia, they've made some big gains there.
Well, they've been using this third lever all season long, and refused to tell us what it was. We do know what it was. We know what it does, because the regulations tell us what you are and aren't allowed to do in terms of controlling your clutch, your engine revs, what traction control and launch control you are and aren't allowed to have. So despite the slightly extended level of paranoia, we're quite happy that we know exactly what it does. It does preset the clutch. Well, the driver sets the clutch and then holds that lever to the brake lever, the manual lever that holds the brakes fully on, so you can then balance the throttle with yourself and have your foot ready to do, your left foot ready to do whatever it is you want to do with it if you need to modulate the clutch once you release it. But it certainly takes some practice, and that, you know, that's one of the things that I'm sure Citroën have, same as everybody else, is that there's not much testing time.
No, but having said that, starts is one of the things that you can probably fit into your schedule a bit easier than circuit testing. And it's also something you can do quite a lot of work with on the bench testing. For example, the Chevrolets have been working on their clutch package a little bit this year. The Chevrolet's a bit hit and miss. It's either very good or you make a big mistake on the line. And I think they've been trying to get more consistency in there. I mean, for Citroën, it's one of the big areas they've got to try and improve on is making the progress in race 2. And one of the easy ways to do that is to get a couple of cars off the line in race 2 at the standing start. And I think that, you know, Citroën are now very much on top of that.
Yeah. You can imagine how much Tarquini's heart must have sank when he checked his mirrors coming out of turn 1 on lap 1 to see 3 Citroëns abreast behind him. He must have just gone, are you kidding me? Come on. They started 10th, 9th, 8th, and they're 2nd, 3rd and 4th out of turn 1. Yeah.
Must be pretty galling, and he said so in the press this week. I mean, Gabrielli is quite frustrated at the moment. You know, he's a former world champion, and I think he'd like to see a bit more progress within the team at Honda. There's a bit of a debate as to whether the car's down on power or whether the car's suffering aerodynamically. That's always a classic in motorsport, when the aerodynamicists blame the engine guys and the engine guys blame the aerodynamicists.
It's the Ferrari way. It's the Ferrari way. Tom Coronel picks up an unladen rear wheel. Tom Chilton yesterday was saying that the car just didn't seem fast, as if it was hitting a wall aero-wise. Running a Chevy yourself, are you finding that to be the case here?
A few of the Chevrolets now have got an upgraded engine package, and I think since we've seen that, when we've gone side by side, particularly in Moscow, and others, you get a lot of downforce, and in the high-speed corners you generate a lot more grip. And I think the whole championship, not just Chevrolet, but over the last 12 months, you've seen the cars get much higher rear ride height, and that has been the trend. There's a few exceptions, but that has been the trend on the whole.
Yeah. But it was always the case that we noted right from the moment they arrived that there was a lot of gap between the rear wheel arch and the rear wheel on the Citroën compared to anything else. Anything else, you can get your fingers between the arch and the tyre. With a Citroën, you can get your vertical fist in and more, sometimes quite a lot more.
With the revised aero on the Chevrolet, that's now basically what they're going to. Now they can get the benefit from the revised aero, the more downforce. The reward is there for having a centre of gravity that perhaps isn't as good with a lower ride height.
And so that gives you then a little bit more oversteer. And again, you can see the larder, the front tyre clearance is much less than the rear tyre clearance. So again, running that rake. And the reason that works is that you have a small aperture at the front and you have a large aperture at the back, and the air must remain at the same velocity as stationary air alongside it, for reasons that I don't quite understand. So basically, it expands, the pressure drops, and it's that pressure drop that allows the air pressure above to push the car down. It doesn't suck the car onto the road, although that's how it's always perceived. It's actually the air pressure flowing over the top that pushes it down. So that small opening at the front, rear opening much larger, the classic ground effect tunnel that we've seen over the last 20-30 years.
The exact opposite of effect of when your aeroplane takes you on holiday.
Exactly, you hope. That's why you have to tilt the wings down to make it land, because they are naturally inclined to stay airborne. Grégoire de Moustier, fastest of the Chevys in the first session. He's 16th at the moment. 1:32.5 his best lap. He did a 31.3, so assuming then still on the same tyres or elderly tyres.
He's on a better lap now, though, Martin.
Yep.
This is probably a better set of carryover tyres that he's using. Bit messy there, though.
Yep, squirmy. It shows how much mechanical grip the car has got, though. It's weaving as it undulates over those curbs.
Yeah, and that would have cost him time. So that's a very impressive lap time, I have to say, because...
Oh, wow, he just went second fastest.
And he would have lost a lot of time with traction out of the last turn there.
1:30.348. His time this morning, 1:31.348. So that's a very impressive lap. And again, you know, we talk about it often, and let's look at the battle between Lopez and Muller. At the moment, Muller is brimful of confidence, can do no wrong. And here, Gregoire is the same, clearly, because to be producing laps like that, that's not accidental. I can't go out and accidentally produce a lap like that. You need to know where you're going and what you're doing, and it just shows how hard it is for a rookie to come into this championship.
Absolutely. There's no silver bullet, and it's a combination of things. You know, we've got some new upgrades on the car. Gregoire knows the circuit very well. Like we've said before, the circuit's very forgiving for mistakes here. It's somewhere you can really attack, and you can see with all those combinations, he's putting in some really good lap times.
Yeah. Mehdi Banani still struggling a little bit in terms of pace in the first session. Now a little quicker, 1:30.72 his best lap, and he did a 1:32.3 in the first, so he's 1.6 seconds quicker than that. Qinghua Ma is fastest of all, Gregoire de Moustier second. Can we make this a grid? Ma, de Moustier, Coronel, Vallon. I know there'll be a few Chevy drivers very happy with that. Vallon fourth, Benani fifth, Loeb sixth, ahead of Muller, Montero, Lopez, and Filippi 10th quickest. Again, you know, one of the Campos Chevrolets, and again showing, you know, and we probably aren't going to see this in 2 weeks' time when we're on a brand new street circuit in Villarreal, where every, you know, a mistake like that, where Jaap van Lagen runs off a foot, here he can just allow it to find its own way back on. There'll be no side to the car. All the suspension will be in the road behind you.
If that happens at the next round at Villarreal, he's not going out in the next session.
No, that'll be the end of your day. You know, there aren't going to be the random tyre stacks sort of standing in the middle of this vast acreage of runoff area. All right, this will brutalise his tyres because those coloured strips are very abrasive, much more so than the track, to penalise drivers. But still, he's still got all the wheels on his wagon. He can drive it back, doesn't have to walk in disgrace. Really
struggling at the moment, Lada, in the times.
Yep.
You know, we've only got 8 minutes this, just over 8 minutes this session remaining, and they get to really put in a competitive time.
Their cars and Stefano D'Asti in the pit lane, so is Ricard Rydell, Jose Maria Lopez, John Filippi. Just coming back out, Tom Coronel, who's third quickest, Sebastian Loeb's out, Tarquini, I'm sure he's coming in here, yeah. So whether that was just the end of a little run.
Yeah, Lado really struggling. I'm not sure if they've got some issues there, but they're a long way off at the moment, down in 15th, 17th and 18th place.
Their aero package hasn't looked that bad. Rob Huff was saying that having the extra weight has certainly changed the balance of power a little bit, but it is only another 20 kilos.
Their race pace has been very good.
Yes.
I think they've still got a bit more to come on the one lap pace for qualifying, but their race pace has been very impressive.
Well, that's, you know, that is always the last thing to come, isn't it? The most, you know, you get more points. I was going to say you don't get points for qualifying. You do get points for qualifying in the top 5, but you get real points for racing, and that's what it's all about. It's winning races, and that's always your prime focus. If then you can find more for qualifying, I'm afraid Thiago's going to lose that lap. Goes to the right of the stack and then gets back inside. If you can find more pace, and that seems to be Honda's problem as well, is that their qualifying pace is pretty much what their race pace is, but with a bit less fuel. And they don't seem to take a big step forward. And Citroën seem to be able to find extra speed and to shed time as they go into qualifying trip. And that again comes from testing the car for a full year, full on, before you come into the championship. Honda didn't do that. They built a car and came racing with it with a singleton entry, and then they brought the full team to a different set of rules that they had then in their second full year. So, I mean, they've been constantly trying to design, develop and adapt a car during racing, whereas Citroën came in with as finely honed a tool as it was possible for them to produce.
Absolutely. Citroën had done probably 2 seasons worth of mileage before they even attended their first race in WTCC.
Yeah.
You have to say that the Hondas look like they're really, really overdriving at the moment. I think the drivers are having to try and wrestle that car around. And again, Thiago in form at the moment. He seems to be having the edge over Gabrielli in recent races.
It does seem that the Honda has, well, I'm not seeing it quite so much here, but at other places, that the Honda's been very tail happy. And whether that is them having to run more rear rakes to get a rear roll centre that keeps the tyres alive, I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be quite as taily here. Maybe they are worried about that lift to drag balance here, and they're trying to get away from some of the drag, and as a result just reducing some of that high-speed grip.
The race director's had enough of Norbert Mikulits not respecting the track limits. He's received a warning.
We saw several laps from free practice 1 deleted for exceeding track limits. None were actually notified on the timing screens. I'm not quite sure why not. Maybe it just went through the stewards afterwards. Stefano D'Asti on a much quicker lap. He's gone 9th fastest. Don't forget, when we go into qualifying at 3 o'clock local time, top 12 is what starts to unleash your greater grid potential. Chatting earlier on to Rob Huff, and he was saying that he reckons that Lada are genuinely somewhere 7th to 12th on pace. They were in first free practice. They're not at the moment, though. Best Lada's in FP1 was Nicky Katzberg in 8th. Rob was 14th. And in between them, Jaap was 12th.
It could just be, Martin, that Lada have had to use a lot of tyres to get themselves up there in qualifying at previous races, and therefore the carryover tyres they've brought to this event are actually quite old, and maybe they just haven't got the youth in the tyres that they've got around them to be quick in every session. They're probably saving their allocations for qualifying.
Quite possible. Now, just saw Ian from Yokohama making some notes on tyre temperatures on Sebastian Loeb's car, and you saw from the pyrometer, the tyre or the temperature gauge that the tyre technicians use, the little probe there, 43.4 track temperature. So what's the time now? 5 to midday in 3 hours. I could see that being 50 comfortably for qualifying, unless something dramatic happens. There is a bit more of a breeze. Whether it's actually the Mistral or whether it's blowing in the wrong direction, I can't quite tell, not being a local, but that will help a little bit in keeping the air temperature down.
This is what I was saying earlier, Martin. You know, it's okay, the drivers may come in, say the car's fantastic, and then the conditions are very different for qualifying, and then they find the balance has gone away. Likewise, you may be struggling with your balance, you make some changes, but then the circuit's changed again, you've actually made the car worse. If you'd left the car alone, actually you might be okay.
Well, it's that morning warm-up syndrome. Do you remember that? We used to get that occasionally. You go out and qualify at 3 in the afternoon, car would feel okay, and then you go out and morning warm-up and it'd feel like an absolute dog at 8:30 or 9 on a cool morning. And then people would start changing their sets. We go, no, it's 9 in the morning. We're not racing until 1 or 2 or 3 sometimes. Don't go chasing the setup because the weather changed.
Absolutely. That's why most of the teams actually plot the various temperatures throughout the day from the Wednesday, so we can build up a bit of knowledge of what the weather's doing on a daily basis. And
then hope that it's not going to change dramatically. Well, hopefully the weather is set fair for the weekend.
Valente's really pushing there.
Yeah. Tom Chilton's on a decent fast lap as well. Third sector puts him up to 6th. So Mar for Citroën. Again, as I said in FP1, clearly he hasn't got the memo saying, you know, no complete fast laps, please. De Moustier 2nd, Coronel 3rd, Vallon 4th, Bernani 5th for Citroën, Chilton 6th. So we've got 2 Citroëns and 4 Chevys in the top half dozen. 2 Citroëns and 3 Chevys in the top 5, which could be Q3. And again, losing 30 kilos, if that's actually going to be reflected in qualifying, which I can't imagine that Loeb, Muller and Lopez are going to be way down where they are.
No, I think perhaps Citroën have got more worries on Sunday afternoon's race pace, and therefore they're trying to understand the car for that at the moment, and they're just not really working on the qualifying setup, because I'll bet anyone they're not going to be there in the next session.
On board with Lopez into senior. Now, we were talking with Gregoire's engineer, Steve Farrell, a little while ago, and, you know, it's just a tiniest little rub on the brakes. A breathe isn't quite enough. I wonder there whether he was just having a bit of a qualifying attempt to go, is that actually going to be flat on a new set of tyres in Q3 with about half a litre of fuel left in the tank?
Probably just about, but the great thing about this track for rookies, as we've said many times already, they can attack, because if they make a big mistake, they're not going to have a big accident, and they live to fight on the next lap. And that's why I think you'll see the rookies doing very well on this circuit this weekend.
And yeah, I mean, he went out wide there. It was all nice and smooth and under control. Didn't have that massive bouncing tank slapper across the grass with eyes like dinner plates as some barrier came rushing up towards him at 100 miles an hour. And there's John Philippi, probably trying the same. He's got a long way off. This is at Beausset. So this is a double right-hander, and this is where Ugo went a little wide, and Philippi there staying on the brakes, and the tail just overtaking the nose, the tail wagging the dog a little there. Well, that won't have done those tyres very much good.
It's very, very abrasive once they get onto that high-speed runoff area.
Yeah. And Ugo meandering through one of the very many different varieties. I'm now going to look, Richard's looking over my shoulder to see how many there are. 167 solutions de piste, which means different track layouts. 167. Quite the I suppose that's whatever half of that is, but all run in the opposite direction as well. So, I mean, I don't know if they ever test going in the opposite direction around some of these parts. A bit like Silverstone, we can have two separate circuits running concurrently, I imagine. But we're using one of them, and not quite sure exactly what layout it is. I did find out last year. I found a master plan that told me it was circuit A-T/32-1 or something, who knows. But it's as snappy as that. Norbert Michelisz. Gonna have to watch track limits like everybody else in qualifying. What you really can't afford is for your big lap to get taken away from you, because there's not going to be another lap in the tyre, no matter how much time is left. And actually, I think what we might see is quite an empty track for quite a lot of qualifying. Don't think the temperature is going to change much between 3 and 3:15 or 3:20. So if you reckon you've only got one lap, and I think you're just going to have to go out and do it. You can't be fannying around, can you?
I think Q2 is probably one of the most open or unpredictable Q2 sessions we've had for a long time. So, you know, some of the guys that would normally just get a banker in, then relax until they get called up for Q2, I think now they're going to have to really watch their step. They're going to have to put a good lap in Q1. It's going to be very, very tight top 12. It's a short circuit, and 3/10 will make a big difference on the grid.
Rob Huff, 17th rather. Jaap van Lagen, 16th in the Lada, and Nicky Katsberg, 18th. That's a long way shy of where they've been, actually, at any stage so far this year. Even in Argentina, where the two cars were completed in the garage, the second and third car, you know, they were not struggling like they seem to be here. The question that we're going to have to follow up with them is, actually, were they even remotely interested in qualifying pace here, or were they working on things like tyre life, brake life, potentially, more likely to be tyre life, and actually trying to get a good race set up so they can get a handle on this little bit of extra ballast that they've got. Rob said it does seem to be quite badly affecting the balance of the car, quite noticeably affecting the balance of the car. He said you can really feel it.
I think the Lada team have been struggling quite a bit with the power steering as well, and with turns like Senior and Beausset, they're going to really struggle if they've got some unpredictability in the power steering.
I was bigging up Nicky Katsberg for surviving race 2 without power steering. Talked to him between the races. He said, no power steering, it's just gone. I talked to him afterwards. He said, no, it was there. It's fantastic. It worked all the way through, so it fixed itself. And, you know, that's often one of those things. Power steering is very funny like that. Racks tend to be... It's often a problem with a power steering like that is flex in the rack, where high loadings just make it seize up. Let's find out what our fastest man thought of free practice 2. Quing Ha Ma is with Alex Ligui.
Yeah, down here with Ma. Great result there, Ma. What have you learned, the difference between FP1 and FP2? What changes did you make?
Well, we are still working on the car setup, and from the FP1 to FP2, because of the track condition is also a bit different. So we're working about to kill the oversteer and the steer level. It seems to be quite good, and we still have slightly things to working on for the quality.
Tell me, I know that in the drivers' briefing yesterday there was a bit of controversy about the new tyre wall that's been put in, I believe, on turn 5. How do you feel about them, and what's it like out there with them in there?
It's a bit scary me in the FP1 because it's like a street race, but as this is like an open track, so to be fair for everyone, I think it's better to have a tyre wall instead of some marshal is watching, but if they took the mistake, which is unfair for the people didn't take the advantage. So it's okay for me. I have nothing to say. I just need to be careful not to push like crazy, and that's all.
And looking ahead then to qualifying, how do you feel the car is, and how do you feel your chances are?
Yeah, I think it's quite comfortable, but yeah, we know our teammates is still also working on the setup, and probably when they put the new tires, it's going to be much faster. But yeah, we will see in the Q1.
That's great, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Eloquent as he is fast, Qinghua Ma, and yeah, that tyre stack, you're coming through senior comfortably north of 125 miles an hour, and it is a big old obstacle, but as Rob Huff pointed out, you can go around the outside. There is so much runoff area, you could probably land a small light aircraft on it. So all you got to do is make sure you don't centre punch it with the bonnet emblem, and you should be okay. And as he says, certainly expect his teammates to go faster in qualifying. Loeb 7th, Muller 8th and Lopez 11th. Don't, in a month of Sundays, imagine that will reflect their qualifying pace. Going to let Richie Coleman go back to